So much for joining us here on 9 News Plus. I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi, and I want to kind of take a detailed look how rare the snowfall that we just got in the mountains is for the month of June. So yes, it's a little bit weird to wake up to snowfall on June the 1st, even here in our fair state of Colorado, where we're notorious for getting some of this kind of wacky off-season snowfall, rainfall. But I kind of mentioned this a few hours ago. This is very beneficial rain for us, and even in the mountains, some pretty beneficial snow. That said, what we got was probably a bit more unusual than you might think. Now, I think it's a bit of a common refrain that we always get is, oh, well, you know, we got snow in June, we got snow in September, October, whatever it is. That's Colorado for you. This snowstorm was a bit unusual for a couple of different reasons. Let's start things off by taking a look at Rocky Mountain National Park, where you can see there, this is a picture that you might take, for example, in January or early February, but this is what it looks like here on the first day of June, which, by the way, is the start of meteorological summer for us. June, the way meteorologists, us, the way we measure seasons, it's by month, and that's for consistent record keeping. And that's because, of course, if you think about the start of a season, sometimes it can vary between June the 20th, June the 21st, June the 22nd. That depends on the astrological season. So for that reason, it's by full month that meteorologists keep track of seasons. So needless to say, long-winded way of saying that it looks a little bit weird here for the 1st of June and the start of meteorological summer here in Colorado. And I'll get into some of those stats here in just a second, but take a look at some of these snowfall reports. Pretty impressive stuff. We're not just talking about a slushy inch or two of snow. We were, in some cases, talking about 9 inches plus worth of snowfall. In fact, there was one report of 16 inches of snow not too far away from Fairplay, just the south of Fairplay in South Park Valley. Leadville, a good 4 or 5 inches of wet snow up that way. Evergreen, 7,500 feet, about 5.8 inches worth of snowfall. So pretty impressive stuff. So just how unusual is this snow? In Evergreen, this was your biggest June snowstorm on record. So data dating back to 1961 there in Evergreen, 5.8 inches of snow, that was good enough for your biggest June snowstorm on record. The biggest one I could find in Evergreen was 3 inches, and that was back in the late 1970s. So for Evergreen specifically, this was very unusual. In fact, again, biggest snowstorm on record based on about 60 years worth of data up that way. In Grant and Park County, about 5 inches of snow for you. That made it your biggest June snowstorm since 1979. So again, we're getting into pretty rare territory when we're talking about 4, 5, 6 inches worth of snowfall. And we're talking about an inch or two of snow in the first week of June. That can happen. That's something that would be every, say, 4 or 5 years. You might get something like that. When we're talking about 4, 5, 6 plus inches worth of snowfall, again, that's when you start venturing into a bit more unusual territory. And speaking of that, into Grant, Colorado, and also into Georgetown, we picked up about 4 inches of snow up that way. That made it also your biggest June snowstorm since 1979. So pretty impressive stuff. We're talking about snow amounts of this caliber here. And in fact, let's pull that Georgetown stat up for you again. There it is. 4 inches in Georgetown, your biggest June snowstorm up that way since 1979. Now, here's another different way of looking at it. Our snowpack now in Colorado, we are at 95% of our season-to-date average, and that is even with the San Juans and the Rio Grande mountains of southern Colorado basically entirely melted out. There's basically no snow left in southern Colorado, at least in the southwest Colorado. In the rest of the state, we are talking about just a ton of snow for this time of year. For the first week of June, for us to be talking about, again, snowfall amounts like this, that has boosted our snowpack from roughly, we were at one point, we were roughly at about 4 or 5, I should say about 40 or 50% of our season date average. We are now at just about 100% of our season date average, and that is very impressive, and that is thanks to our recent run of May snowstorms. So again, a couple of different ways of looking at it, but the quick answer to the question of how rare this June snow is, it was pretty rare. In most cases, we were talking about our biggest June snowstorm above 8,000 feet in probably a good 20 plus years. So this was pretty impressive stuff, taking a look at some of the data for us. And then you factor in the snowpack. where we are in terms of, again, the overall snow, what we've got on the ground for the first week of June, we're in pretty unusual territory, especially from I-70 on north. Now, southern Colorado basically completely skunked from this most recent storm. That's not good news for southwest Colorado, but for the I-70 mountains on north, very good news. A lot of beneficial rain and snow for us. Denver area picking about an inch of rain. That is very good news for us here in the Denver area. And then again, you get on up into the mountains, the liquid equivalent of all that snow. Pretty impressive stuff up that way. And again, when we're talking about, again, 4, 5, 6 inches worth of snowfall, that's pretty unusual for the first week of June, even for us here in the state of Colorado, where we're used to getting some of that wackier weather. So hopefully that explains for you that what we just picked up was pretty exceptional for the first week of the month of June and the start of meteorological summer. Now, that said, we're going to now transition to a more June-like pattern with 70s and 80s for the rest of the week and scattered showers and thunderstorms for the rest of the weekend into the upcoming weekend. So again, hopefully that answers that for you. I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Thanks so much for joining us here on 9 News Plus.